Okay, it is 5 o'clock on the money. I hereby call this, order this workshop and call meeting of the mayor and the board of commissioners. Miss Sonia, may I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Levingood has asked for an excused absence. He's on vacation. Commissioner Mosier.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Stutz.
Here.
Thank you so much. We do not have anyone registered for public comment, but we do have in our presence tonight, thank you for being here, Director Boroff and Janet here to present the budget for the Board of Education. You can do it wherever you want to, sir. Right there is fine, or
I'll go there and put this up. Read it.
read it. Well, you've got to be gone in about 30 minutes,
I'm
sir.
good. Yeah,
so
I'm good. They probably wouldn't wait on me.
We
but
have you on the timer tonight.
They would tell me what it is when I got there for sure. Those of you who don't know, I'm getting ready to find out what my second grandbaby's going to be sometime when I leave here. So pretty exciting.
I'm excited too.
Speaking of exciting, maybe this budget has been exciting. Would be kind of an understatement. It's exciting for other folks, probably other than Janet and myself, because it's requiring a lot more money than we're used to spending. But that's okay. I think the end result will be worth the money that we're adding to our current budget. I think it's pretty obvious now. It's a done deal. Sweetwater High School will be part of Sweetwater City Schools as of July the 1st. And we are, again, we're super excited about it. It has been a lot of work. People in our office have really put in a lot of time to get it ready, because part of that is we are of the thought process that challenge us and tell us it can't be done, and I promise you we'll work diligently to make sure it is done. And that's kind of what the approach that we've had. We probably will miss something along the way, but I guarantee you it's not because of lack of effort. Janet has spent countless hours with this budget. We've had so many budget meetings and then had to readjust and had to come back and talk about it again. But just a few things that I do want to highlight is during this process in trying to meet the high school staff and merge our staff together with that, we have increased our health insurance contribution from the standpoint of the school system. So our folks are going to benefit from that. Our current folks and the high school folks are going to benefit in another way that I'll talk about in a few minutes. So far, it's a win-win for both parties. And I'll refer to it right now as both parties, but ultimately at the bottom, we're not both parties anymore, we're one. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. We do anticipate a 10% increase in insurance from the state, and probably even further than just the state, but it's 10%, which is, we've always kind of looked at 5, 6, maybe 7, but this year they're telling us 10%, and don't be shocked if it might be even a little more. And so when you talk about that, you have to start at some point. So we started at 10, or Janet started at 10, and we'll go from there and hope and pray that it doesn't get above that, and pray that it's significantly below that, but I don't anticipate that's going to happen. So we budgeted at least a 10% increase in insurance. We had to really, in trying to purchase, I guess, and make this merger happen between Sweetwater City and Sweetwater High School, one of the three things that I really pushed, our board really pushed, is the fact that you're going to make more money coming to the county or coming to the city. We're going to honor the retiree insurance, and we're going to honor the tenure. Those are the three things that we really pushed, and those are the three things that, I'm old school and I'm old, and my word is my bond, and the board supported me on that. So we have worked very hard to make sure that we've done each one of those three things specifically. And to do that, we were already ahead of them in a lot of areas, with the exception of the master's degree. that was about years 6 through 15. So you can imagine a bachelor's 0 through 20, master's 0 through 20, EDS 0 through 20. We were only below them in one little 7-year area. So we vowed that we were going to fix that. So we did. Lots of work went into that to make sure that we were paying salary-wise more to certified teachers than they currently were at the Monroe County. So we did that. Getting to high school, it did increase our salary line from about 9.5 to 12.8, and so obviously that's a pretty significant I don't want to say sacrifice, but it's a pretty significant bump. We're fortunate that, because of the city and because of some decisions that we've made, that we can handle that kind of increase. I don't want to do it too many times, but we currently can handle that. Plus, a lot of that we can get through our TISA funding. There was a little bit of a concern whether we were going to get that this year, whether it's going to be put off till next year. We found out about a month ago that we were going to get TISA funding. So a good portion of that, maybe not, if not all of that. We always said when we took this journey to get to high school that the funding would follow the kid, and so we're not going to have to put up that much more money through the city or through the city schools that the state and the feds aren't paying for. So we kind of already knew that, and we'll get a lot of this through the TISA funding. We are going to need to hire, or we're in the process and almost finished with CTE coordinator. I was big when I talked to the high school that I was in a lot of the ag programs myself. I was involved in that kind of area as much as our community is. And so I really told them that I'm really going to focus on having a very, very strong career technical education type program at Sweetwater High School. I can't say what they currently have, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, but I can say that's a major focus that I'm really honing in on, is to make sure that we are able to offer those kids a competitive opportunity to be certified when they get out of high school, to have a certificate, to be licensed potentially when they get out of high school so they can go straight to work. Because I had one of those kids who I'm very blessed to have my kid who was very, very intelligent, and I learned that although you don't give up, you don't quit on those kids, but they're going to make it. They're self-motivated to the point where they're going to make it. Some of us, like me when I was in high school, and I'm going to throw Eddie under the bus, like me and Eddie in high school, we needed the CTE programs to keep us motivated. We really did. We just didn't know it, and we liked it when, the police came in and talked to us. We had the police come in and police, ambulance, and fire came in and talked to us probably when we were sophomores and juniors. From that point on, I wanted to be a fireman or EMT and then maybe a policeman. So I see the importance of that program, and we're going to make sure we focus very, very diligently on that. So we're hiring a new CTE coordinator. 2 maintenance positions. The reason we're hiring 2, we have 2 now, well, 3, but we have 2 truly maintenance guys, and then we use another guy as basically just a helper that I didn't want to let go when we did away with custodial stuff and hired a company. But one of our current guys is going to a mowing contract, which is another position that we ended up feeling like that would be something that would really benefit. So we're hiring 2 maintenance guys. One of those is already hired. Another one, I got 5 or 6 resumes for those 2 positions. Hired 1, so I still got 4 more people that I can choose from. So that's and got an interview tomorrow. So I feel like those will be filled fairly quickly with certified folks, with an HVAC guys, one I'm interviewing tomorrow. An additional tech guy. We have a lot more technology involving 587 more students. So we felt like we could probably at least start with 1 more. use our work-based learning program in the high school to facilitate some of the on-site stuff, because that in itself will give them a little bit of an opportunity as a student to come out and do hands-on work with the coordination of our tech guys, to where they could get on-site information and experience. And so it's twofold. I get free labor from those guys, but also they get, experience that can help them when they get into the actual classwork. So we use some work-based learning high school kids to help there. I've already said contracted mowing. We created a spot for a special education coordinator to free up the current person that we have to kind of help out with pre-K 6 curriculum supervisor. So that's a new position. Part-time ELL. The high school doesn't have that many English language learners, because by that time we've kind of phased them out through our K-8 system, so we could afford to do a part-time there. Having to hire an additional nurse because the high school had contracted through CHOTA, and so we'll hire another nurse and then a 912 supervisor. And that is, I feel pretty good about the opportunity for a 912 supervisor. Working on somebody right now that I feel like might come around if Commissioner Martin will really push and talk to him. Then coaching supplements. This is a big hit. It really is a big hit. It's really kind of frustrating on my part, because I coached baseball for many, many years, and I made $990 a year in coaching baseball. Now those dudes make about $3,800 in baseball, and maybe even more than that. But the total coaching supplements just for the high school is $97,000. A couple of years ago, they decided that to be competitive, the salaries have to be competitive, and so they upped those salaries across Monroe County to be competitive. And so luckily for us, we inherited that $97,000. But I say that to say this: we had our high school baseball team in the state, and we had a student to do track and won the state. And so as long as, money well spent, and whatever we need to make sure our kids are both competitive academically and athletically, then we're committed to doing that. This is probably the least raise I have given our current folks, because I have presented to the commissioners now 11 or 12 years, and I don't think it's a secret that I'm pretty conservative. And I think, and Angie's worked with me now for a while, she knows conservative is not even fair. It's even triple conservative.
If there has ever been a good steward of the taxpayers' money, it is Rodney Borough. I will die on that hill.
They always told me that you don't need to treat it like your own money, but when you're in my position, I wish I could treat it like my own money, because I'm married to somebody that doesn't necessarily allow me to be that conservative. But as a school district, the buck stops with me, so I can say we're going to not do that, and we're not going to buy it, and so we're going to make do with what we got. But we're doing a 2% raise this year, and we can work off of that a little bit with doing 2%. Normally, I think I presented when we talked about the high school. I think over the last 6 or 7 years, that number of percentage raises for those 5 or 6, 7 years has been like 16%. And in one year, I couldn't even count when we did the $50,000 requirement for this actual school year. We did it 3 years ago, and we did in that particular year, we were anywhere from 3 to 18%. So I feel like, and I mentioned whenever we presented this, that we need to show our employees that we appreciate them. So we've always given a high percentage, but with the not knowing of the cost it's going to happen with the high school, I was very conservative to allow me to go in and do something if I need to later. but we got to get to later. That's my philosophy. We are probably looking at trying to find a third maintenance vehicle, and that's not going to be a new one, but we're going to try to find a third one. I don't really like for those guys to buddy up because they like to riding around with each other instead of getting work orders finished. So that's where we are. Those are the things we know about. It's scary about the things that we don't know about. And as much as we have bounced ideas off of each other, as much as we have worked behind the scenes to get this thing to where we can feel good about taking over July the 1st, there will be some things missed. And so we're going to try to figure out as best we can to make sure that doesn't happen. I told the board, when I talked to the board, I said, you know, if you've ever watched the movie Roadhouse, and Patrick Swayze's in there and he's trying to clean up this bar, not that the high school's a bar, but trying to clean that up and make things go smoothly. They had a big bar room fight and they won it, and the owner of the bar was thinking, oh, we're good now. It's all going to be real good. And he basically said it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the culture and the philosophy right now is through the roof positive. But you go in and start changing things, it's going to be a little harder. Maybe not necessarily financially is what you guys have me here for, but just when you hear scuff, when you hear people talking in the public that this K-8 system is coming in here telling us high school people what to do. There's some truth to that, but there's a little bit of maybe not so much truth. I was in the high school for 16 years. Dr. Vance was high school for several years. Shane Johnston was high school for several years. So we have high school experience. And so I'm not worried about that, but it's getting through that first set of hurdles and hiccups before it'll get better. And I guarantee you it will get better. But I can tell you right now, every staff member that I talked to and every staff member that talked to me, that I reached out to, that reached back to me, that they're so super excited about the opportunity and looking forward to working for Sweetwater City Schools. Any questions? It's a lot to throw out there in a short amount of time, but it's what I got.
Thank you.
These are really big number questions and just ballpark. I know in acquiring the high school, obviously we paid money down, which was 1.52, somewhere in there. So the budget before the high school came along, what was the number on an annual basis?
About 12.
Yeah, just before we had the high school.
Anywhere from 12 to 14.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
really.
so now that we have the high school, what is that end number? I'm seeing 20 on the page.
That's going to be pretty close. That's kind of what we were talking about too, is an increase in that much, but you also increase in your federal and state funding.
And that was my
offset.
my leading other question is, you go from 12 to 14 to 20. What was the total amount brought over by the students themselves as far as the money following the student?
The,
From the high school.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 4.133. So that the presentation that we did for you all
Mhm.
at the board, the numbers were remarkably close.
Okay.
So yes, so that would be the increased funding.
So just asking the big ballpark question. So 12 to 14, 4.3, Sweetwater math, that's 18.3. So we had to come up with an additional $2 million.
I would say that's that will be pretty close, if not somewhat conservative, because I feel like, some of the things, I feel like big items, big dollar items, we're probably aware of. It's those little things that add up.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing about it is that I say we because Janet is as much a part of it, or probably more of a part of it than I am. We have built a pretty good slush fund to be able to catch up on some of that stuff, because I
Mhm.
feel like this will be the most expensive year that we
Sure.
have, because it's like, you know, not knowing and not, because we've already talked about, you know, we kind of got, we're going to get this so late, we're going to have to go ahead and pay for it this year, but I guarantee you, you know, we'll get our hands around it,
Sure.
you know, as we grow throughout the year. So this will be the most expensive year that we have. This will be a very difficult, I will probably have to consult with my wife to bring me some heavy medication, because it'll be one of those things like, really? We're doing that, and I've not done this in 11 years? But it's to get us to that point. And once we get to that point, it'll be like, we ain't doing this next year.
Sure.
And so I feel like that's gonna happen some this year to.
I know you guys were way more fiscally responsible and conservative, and funds were available. Just kind of asking, when the dust all settled, you know, this is kind of where we're at, and then obviously get the first year behind us, and as you said, things will adjust, things will settle, things will shift, but at the end of the day, it's still, people ask me from time to time, why do y'all want that? And the answer I give them is based on the way the city of Sweetwater goes at things. The city school system brings that same kind of energy and willingness and tenaciousism, if I could use that word or make it up, and it's going to improve. So it seems like some days it's like literally our whole life we talked about this happening, and here it is.
We're here.
So please don't think I asked those questions in opposition. By no means. I was just curious where it all landed when everything came over, all the numbers were exposed, truly given.
Well, and one thing I'll say too is, you know, and I try to defend the county and Dr. Windsor, because I know how hard that is.
True.
When I talk to people, I say, when you talk about a pot of money that the county would get, they have to divide that in 3 high schools, especially in the CTE stuff, in the CTE world, or maybe even in, you know, just basic stuff. But they have to divide that into 3 pots to try to please 6 different communities. For us, now we only have that one pot. We have one community that's behind this 100%. And so I feel like, you know, when I'm starting to get beat down, I guarantee you somebody in my office or somebody on this commissioner's board will say, hey, we're good. I guarantee you the community is going to be behind this. Where before over there, it's like, well, I won't even share what Weaver called it, but it's like, I'll vote for this situation if you'll vote for me on this situation. We don't have that. We don't worry about that anymore. We're voting for one situation,
Right.
and that kid is primarily what it is.
I mean, that's the other side of the focus, is for the first time in 100 years, that dollar is actually helping that student in our community.
In our Sweetwater City Schools High School.
So,
That hadn't been able to be. We hadn't been able to say that.
seriously.
And you know, so anyway, that's exactly our philosophy is as much as I could mess it up, I don't think our community will let us fail, because our community will be behind it. We have a very strong commissioner board. We have a very strong school board, and everybody is on board with this thing working out. And it's like, hey, Rodney, you need to reel it in right here, or hey, you need to think about this. And you know, I'm not so prideful to say my way is the only way. It's like, hey, there's a lot at stake. But I feel like that, you know, with everybody pulling in the same direction, we're not having to share money with somebody that
Yeah.
we're not going to say we don't like them. But one thing that I told and I'll say this, you know, I told the high school staff that I'm a competitive person, and I first want to be the first in this county. And then we're going to talk about moving past that. and that's in academics, athletics, arm wrestling, seed spitting contest, whatever it is. We want to be first in the county. So,
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
anything else? Throw them out here. I'm ready.
Thank you, Director Borf.
Nothing else?
Oh, okay.
You know that new roof, does it affect going over the walls, or can they still do that? Did they seal that down?
I don't know. What do you know about going underneath the ceiling? Shh. We're
Eddie, you letting his secrets out.
all right.
So,
Well,
board, you can make a motion to go ahead and vote on this, or it is on the agenda for next week. So that call is up to you. And the draft in your budget does include all these numbers from the Board of Education.
Well, I'll move that we incorporate the Board of Education budget as presented into our citywide budget for action next Monday.
Okay,
Second.
that's good. Any discussion? So will be voted on. All in favor? Okay, all in favor? Okay.
I was swallowing. I did not say aye. I apologize. I'm just going to go on record.
Director Bora, Janet, thank you all so
You are
much.
formally excused.
Yes. So go. Be careful.
gotta go put my pink shirt on.
Yes.
That's right.
Because we don't know what it's gonna be. We're supposed to wear one of the
I can't wait to see.
Congrats.
Okay, so next we were awarded a fire equipment grant from the state of Tennessee for rescue equipment. Jessica, will you please review the bids?
Yes, we opened these by committee because of the grant requirements, so that Chief Anderson would have a chance to go through all of those and make sure it lines up with what the grant contract said. We only received one bid. It was from Rescue One, which we do have an account set up with. It's a spreader with batteries, cutter with batteries, another cutter with batteries, a strut system, auto crib kit, flex volt battery charger, the scene lighting kit, and the rescue tool mounting system. All of those things were approved in the grant contract, and this appears to comply with the bid specs. The total amount was $88,072.99. There is another purchase order that'll be issued under this grant for around $13,000, so it did not have to be bid out. It's from a different vendor. This appears to comply. Chief Anderson's had a chance to review it. So if we could get a motion to approve, this is 100% funded by the grant. There's no match on it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, great. Motion carries. So we were presented with a recommendation from our Parks and Recreation Commission concerning a property off Highway 68. You all toured that site, or some of you did, and we have before us a contract to make an offer if you choose to move forward with this. So Jessica has some information to show you with this.
Just to kind of let you see the
Item.
lay of the land, I'm putting this up behind us. Sam threw this on a topo, some information he was able to extract on the property. That kind of shows what the layout would be if we put 3 soccer fields on the part that's already cleared. So it's not, it's pretty much ready to go on that section. Some dirt work and things that we might possibly be able to do in-house. But that could kind of show you how 3 soccer fields could lay out on the area that doesn't have any trees on it at this point. And then Scott Wilson, who is the real estate agent for the seller, he forwarded us 2 models that they had laid out, just kind of helping you understand what there's room for. So not saying that this is what the design is, or that even these are the sports that are going to go there, but just so you can kind of visualize what's capable of being placed on that property. And there's a second layout. So that one has 2 soccer fields, 2 baseball fields, parking, tennis courts. So it's a pretty significant piece of land. The lease contract is in your packet. The agreed sale price, $1.2 million. What we would be voting on tonight is to make the offer on the land. The offer does have some contingencies, and John Cleveland may have more that he wants to add to that or talk to you about, but just so you know what's already in it, based on our review of the property, what was mentioned by the people that were present that night, we wanted it to be contingent on clear title. I think John Cleveland is gonna recommend we have title insurance. Also, any topo or survey or soil testing that we might wanna do, the contingencies all include that. It does require 1% earnest money, meaning we would be paying $12,000 in earnest money down. If any of the contingencies listed in this contract are the reason that we decide not to move forward, we get our earnest money back. If not, we lose the earnest money. So if we decide to go ahead with this and then we just change our mind later, not for a contingency reason, they would get to keep the $12,000. It does rely on annexation because the comptroller's office has said we cannot finance it unless we annex the property. So that's one of the contingencies on there. We also put core drilling, a boundary survey, environmental tests. We left that kind of vague so that if we thought of something later that we wanted to do a test on, it's in there. Take it away.
Ms. I think before I asked this question, most of it's already annexed. So there's a little corner or something.
If I remember correctly, and you know, we need to look at a survey to know for sure, but we think this corner right here may not be totally annexed. So that little bottom corner.
And will the 60-day time frame give us time to annex?
Maybe, maybe not. It may be that we couldn't close on the loan. If we're financing this, we couldn't close on the loan until after it was annexed, but that may give us a week or two wiggle room. We may have to write the check up front and then draw the funds down from the loan 2 weeks later, which we have enough, you know, fund balance that we can handle floating that a little while until we get it closed. We would attempt to get it all annexed. And I think as long as we agree to the offer tonight, I think they intend on making the request as a property owner for it to be annexed. Probably if someone besides us bought it anyway, they probably want to be annexed anyway. So I don't think we're going to run into a hurdle there, but even if we did, we don't have to close the financing before we can write the check. We could technically write the check and then float it a couple of weeks until we get the financing. John, what else had you been thinking that maybe we wanted to add as a contingency?
First thing that came to my mind is not in here, that typically would be if it was ordinary financing and not just a single tract, would be a provision that it has to appraise for enough for us to get an 80% loan or whatever percentage, you know, it would be based on the value of. It's my understanding, what Jessica found out from the comptroller's office, but we never did hear back from him testing.
No.
They say that we're not required to get an appraisal. And apparently, there's no appraisal required for us to be able to get the bond issued. My concern would be that if we put that in there and we get a professional appraisal and it doesn't appraise for anywhere close to what we're paying for it, which could happen with the absence of comparables to boost it on up there, we can still waive that and close anyway, the same as we can with any of these. So that's, you know, professional appraisal for that, I don't know that it does us any good. It won't bind us if we don't, but if I suspect that it might not appraise for a lack of comps, we could end up with a little bit of egg on our face for spending way more money than it would appraise for, even though we know that it's well worth what we're paying for it, for what we get regarding the location and the use we have for it. Without putting that in as a specific contingency or subject to, we need to also have in there, if it's subject to bond issuance, there's not really any question of what we'll qualify for, and they'll issue the bonds that we ask for.
if we move forward tonight with that list of contingencies, adding those things that John's recommended, whether we follow through on those or not, but just to make sure they're listed as a contingency. I imagine your question might be, what would the financing cost? So I had Bond Fund run 3 different rates for us. The one that's included in your packet is exactly the purchase amount. So it's 1.2 million, which means if we do pay for the earnest money or core drilling or any of that stuff, we're paying for that out of fund balance, like out of pocket, and then we're financing with the land amount would be 1.2 million. At that level, you can look back through she ran us a couple different amortization schedules. Basically at 1.2 million, your annual payment, if you finance it for 20 years, is right around $90,000 a year for debt service. Your 25-year rate is right around between 80 and 85,000. The difference in the 20 and the 25 year is how long the interest rate is fixed for. The fixed rate on a 20-year is 4.28%, which is a good rate. A couple of years ago when we were talking about the community center, our answer was if we could get an interest rate under 5%, that would kind of be a green light for us. So if you do the variable rate for 25 years, that rate can fluctuate more often. But it can also save money. You're financing it for longer though. So in the end, you still end up paying more interest. So my thought on it would be probably go for the 20-year at the fixed rate of 4.28%. That is her estimate right now. So your interest rate can change between now and when you actually lock in. We are not locked in on an interest rate, but this is just to give you all an idea about what that would cost. Another important point, I think we talked about this in the last meeting, but just to reiterate, the comptroller's office will only let us finance land that is inside the city limits. So that does limit you to what you're going to be able to purchase that's inside the city limits, or it would have to be adjacent enough that we could annex it, like this one is. And John already told you the comptroller's office is not going to require an appraisal. We can also check with RDA. The problem with RDA is it takes them longer. So if we are on a 60-day time frame, it would be almost impossible to get information back from RDA. Sometimes they can beat the interest rate by a little bit, but I have found that their administration is not as good. So usually the paperwork doesn't get filed, and I've just not been impressed with that program when we've used it in the past. So the bond fund has been very consistent at getting me quotes and rates and all of those things. So we're not voting tonight on the financing. If we decide to make the offer and then we decide later to finance it, we would have to have a public hearing, a public notice, pass a resolution for the bond. Like there's several other steps for the financing of it. So you don't have to make a decision tonight on the financing, but I wanted you to have at least an idea about what that would come out to as an annual debt payment. So if you do the 20-year, which is the one I would probably lean to at this point, unless I get more information, I would say the 20-year. You can go up to a 30-year. Again, that interest rate fluctuates more. It's as low as 2.8 sometimes, and it's as high as 4.5 or 4.6 sometimes, and that annual payment's around $78,000 on average a year, $79,000, and that's for 30 years. So to me, the shorter term, the 20-year, might be the best option. I did also have her run 2 other quotes, which are in, actually I don't think they're in your packet, but they're things that we can discuss and I can pass on as we get closer to time. I had already had her run a $5 million because the first property that the Parks and Rec Commission looked at was a $5 million property. If you did $5 million for, let's see, 20 years, that's debt service payment comes in around $380,000 a year. Then I also had them run $7 million in case you were interested at all in doing the community center project. We won't get bids in on that for another couple of weeks. I think it's the 4th, June 4th. Mm-hmm. When we get bids on that, if you did a $7 million loan, meaning you're buying, because they're for the same purpose, which is recreation, so it's an approved city purpose, they both be for recreation, the community center and the land. If you did a $7 million loan for 25 years, that puts you around $470,000 a year. So that's just kind of multiple different amounts to give you a ballpark idea. We're not voting on financing tonight, but I did want you to kind of know what that meant for the actual budget number. I am very comfortable with us issuing more debt. All of these are long-term projects that are serving multiple generations. We have very low debt. I showed you the chart last week that our General fund debt service budget's around 3%. We're lower than other people that are rated the same size
That
as us.
Moody
and-
rating.
Yeah, that Moody. He gave us a good rating. So, it's a good time to issue debt, maybe a little bit better than I even thought it would be. But that's kind of the numbers. If you all have more questions or more things to talk about, and Alan's been in those committee meetings with Parks and Rec Commission, so he may have something to add also.
I'm just excited about the growth, so I'll move to approve the mayor to execute a contract to make a contingent offer on this property with the added contingencies that Mr. Cleveland spoke of.
So, now, are we adding appraisal or not? Because this contract says no appraisal.
No, it's my recommendation that we not require
Yeah.
appraisal.
Okay.
Just the bond issuance. Just the bond
The bond
issuance
issue,
of
yeah.
As a
contingency.
contingency, okay. And you can add that in the contracts that way.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, it's
I ask-
discussion.
Let me ask one silly question. With the appraisal factor, could that help us with the overall cost, or 1.2 is where they're at and
That's-
where they'll stay?
That's gonna be where they're at.
Their initial list price on this was $50,000 higher. The Parks and Rec Commission went back to them and asked if they would accept 1.2. They said yes. You can try and negotiate if you want to. Scott feels like that's their bottom line. So,
I was just, the idea or the question came to mind when John was talking about, if it doesn't appraise, is there any further negotiating based off of, us as commissioners having to approve something that doesn't appraise at that amount, how might that look? I'd never thought of that until John said that. But
and you're
this-
recommending not do the appraisal.
I'm recommending that we not do the appraisal.
Okay.
Question. I'm not sure exactly legally how it would be questioned. It's more just a matter of, somebody's always gonna say, you should've got it cheaper.
Yeah.
But I don't know of any legal attack that could be.
No, I just,
On the board's authority to make the purchase, even if it was appraised lower.
okay.
The thing is that, it's in an economy where the value of all properties appreciating, then the older comps are not ever going to be as high as the current values. And for larger ticket items, that amount goes up more each time there's a sale.
I just wanted to ask and see if there was any wiggle room based on that statement, so. If not, the answer's no.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. So the motion carries that we will go forward with the contract to offer. Okay, we will now open workshop discussion. First, we held this ordinance draft on the livestock permits and request revisions from John. A new draft is before you and open for discussion.
So this is the one that we had tabled. John Campbell and I have batted this around with John Cleveland 15 times in the last couple of weeks, and I know Commissioner Martin has recently had some meetings that he may have an opinion about this too, since it's his department. Obviously, John Campbell's department does some of the enforcement of it, but the animal control person is who would make the determination of whether a permit should be issued or not, which falls under Commissioner Martin's department. So, the way it's written right now is we would allow the permitting process even within 300 feet of a residence if they met certain guidelines. And it still puts the burden of determining whether that can be met onto the animal control officer, which I think probably was John Cleveland's primary concern, that you've got one person having to make that determination. And of course, that can always lead to someone appealing it, or, I mean, worst case scenario, suing over it. But we have had an uptick in the calls. I think maybe I brought it on when I called everybody tradwives, but we have had like 3 different families call about owning ducks in their property, which would, I guess, fall under this. It's just weird that once you start talking about it, it's like it happens more often, but it's definitely something we're going to run into more often than we have. So.
I think the proposal suggested, everybody seems to like the idea of having a checklist of
Yeah.
requirements. And if you look at the 10-102 subpart B,
Mhm.
that's essentially the checklist.
Yeah.
If the animal control officer was going by that, no doubt we'd literally have check boxes by
Right.
each one.
Plus, the 300 feet is still listed up here.
This is within the 300 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside 300 feet,
There is no permit. They're allowed to
Right.
do it. Yeah.
then
Yeah. I mean, all those items, I think, I mean, just for instance, item 2 talks about noise nuisance, and that's what got, oh man, I can't believe I was gonna say that, that's what got the goat. Sorry.
Wow. Ring that burglar alarm, Mayor. That one deserves
Stick with your day job, Sam.
Hey, I wasn't even
Thank
trying.
you.
But I guess what the checklist does is it allows our folks to have guidelines, and if one of these guidelines are busted or is not met, then the permit can be revoked and the animal has to be removed. Is that my understanding?
well,
Or it's,
the whole idea is to not, for there not to be a permit if we have
yes,
a reason to think that these are not
Right.
going to be up front instead of waiting till the
Yes.
phone back in.
but even then,
Even then, it can be revoked.
okay.
We had a lot of fun too with permit A defining what animals is affected. No person shall keep any animal other than a dog, cat, hen, rabbit, or hare, or pygmy animal outdoors within a residence. Because some people have these pets that live indoors, so this doesn't really affect them. If they're just letting them out to go to the bathroom or whatever, but they mostly live indoors, they don't have to get a permit for that. John, do you want to talk about pygmy animal just for my entertainment?
Part of the discussion we had was just about the small pot-bellied pigs and tiny horses. There's just about any breed of animal has been miniaturized, and I don't know why they were, and they're always going to be pets. Those are not livestock animals, so I thought that's more like a cat or a dog. We've had many people who have chickens inside the city limits, and the only real problem I see with those are the noise from the roosters, so I included hens. They'll need a rooster anyway. Ask many of the women, I might be here, says either. But, I put rabbits or hares just because I see those around town in hutches, and no doubt they're being out in the yards and such.
So those animals you don't have to get a permit for. There was a time in the city where they registered every single dog and cat. We do not want to go back to those days. So, dogs, cats, hens, rabbits. If someone wants a rooster, if someone wants a duck, if someone wants a horse or a cow or a goat, all those would require a permit if they're within 300 feet of their neighbor's yard, if we pass this ordinance.
Is that per head? I'm thinking of a situation up on Fair Street. There's about 20 out in the side yard.
You mean they have to have a permit for each one?
Yeah.
I guess so, because otherwise you'd start with one, which may not be a problem, but once you get to 20, it's a farm instead of a residential neighborhood, so.
I thought I tried
But
to
what if they,
suggest something about the number.
We're not enforcing.
one little rabbit gets
number
with another
5?
little rabbit,
And then they have more little
and
rabbits.
they have you more little rabbits.
Well,
When
rabbits,
they
they
have more little
don't have to have a
rabbits-
permit for,
Well, I know,
so
but yes.
they're allowed to
One
just
little
have all
goat
kinds
gets
of
with
rabbits.
another little goat,
Number,
and
Uh-huh.
then you have multiple little goats.
number 5 is this, but the animals shall not be so numerous as to not meet any of the foregoing requirements.
Okay,
So if one
Okay.
animal might be okay, but 5 won't, then you don't check that box, you don't get a permit.
Okay.
okay.
So
I thought
here's,
hard about putting a number in there. For
that
different
would,
animals, the number would be different.
Yeah.
but does that leave it open for the animal control person to decide?
Yeah.
That's at their discretion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it's the department head, then it's the department commissioner, and then it's the 5 of you, and then it's the chancery court.
Okay. Just as long as we know the process.
Now, okay, that brings up a really good point, and I am still pushing that we not allow the permit at all. Because to me, giving a black and white answer in the code is always preferable. Now, John may feel differently, or maybe we're on the same page about this, I can't remember, we've talked it to death. I think you say if you're within 300 feet of a residence, you're not allowed to have a permit, you're not allowed to have this kind of animal. And that's the end of it. We don't offer a permit.
Yes.
That's what I think the ordinance should say instead of this. I think that is, we're less likely to get sued, but also, we're less likely to have the trad wife with her goat standing in the middle of our city board meeting appealing to you all because they're not happy about the answer they got from the animal control officer, the department head, or the commissioner. And that's what it'll end up being if we put a provision in there and allow for this permit. So there's my 2 cents. And also, in the 21 years I've worked here, every single person that called and asked if they could have goats inside the city limits, I would say, no, you can't. If you live within 300 feet of a house, you can't have a goat. I thought that was the rule all along. So the fact that it turns out they can, if they apply for a permit and get the animal control officer to give them permission, that was news to me. So.
But as this reads,
As this reads, they can get a permit if they meet all these conditions, and it puts it on the shoulders of the animal control officer to have to make that decision.
but the 300 feet inside the city, that's gonna be a special case.
That's not in,
Well, they don't have to, if they're more than 300 feet away from their neighbor.
Cows, swine, sheep, horses, mules, and goats within 300 feet of any resident.
yeah, that's your old
That,
code.
That's the whole.
yeah.
Your new one doesn't have a distance requirement, does it? I didn't see one in there.
Yeah.
If they are
It
more than
does.
300 feet, they still don't have to get a permit. They can still have that goat if I'm more than 300 feet away from my neighbor. Whether we, right?
It was on there, 300 feet, right,
Yeah.
So,
to resistance. Oh, this is the
So-
old one.
so the old and the new get in there, and I just pulled out the old?
No, it is just the new one. There is no old one in there, other than right here where it says whereas, this
That's
is
that
what the
first
code
rep.
says, yeah.
What's the statute as it is now? So whereas it now does that, but if you'll notice, it says we're repealing that section.
Gotcha, I'm sorry.
The 300 feet.
The only thing will be this italicized part down here. I did not see any
It's not in there.
distance requirements.
But 10-102, 10-101 is what still says they can have them if they're more than 300 feet away, right? And 10-102 is what we're replacing, I think. I think,
What she- see
let
what
me pull up the
it is?
code just to make sure.
Section 10-101 has the 300 feet. And we left it alone. This leaves it that alone. That's my,
Because I thought, and once again, old man memory ain't what she used to be, but I thought we had a conversation that the
Oh, it is
300 feet
10-102.
was going to drive
You're
the
right.
bus.
It says deleting that entire section in its entirety and putting it back in, which does not have 300 feet. So that's not the intention. We still want to have the 300 feet no matter what, right?
101 says I can't allow them to run at large.
Right. Okay, so we got more work to do on this ordinance. We definitely want the 300 feet, right? That's
Yes.
always, okay, so we
Because-
know that for sure. We'll get that fixed.
And what,
But then the question is there ever a time when you want people to be able to have these animals within 300 feet of their neighbor?
No,
no,
So then we don't, we don't need to pass this ordinance then, if that's the consensus. Because this ordinance is gonna say you can get a permit if you're only 100 feet away from your neighbor, or whatever that distance is, less than 300. So if we say we don't want that to be the case, if we just want the rule to be the 300 feet, all we would need to do is change 102 to remove the section that says the health officer or animal control officer shall issue permits. We can remove all of that section, and then it's always 300 feet and that's it.
Does this cover where little Johnny's daddy wants to have a?
If you say potbelly pig again, John Anderson,
I'm not just saying, for somebody's birthday, wants to have a horseback riding for 2 days, is that?
As long as nobody complains.
well, we don't care as long as nobody calls and complains. That's really what the
That's
bottom
what
line
this
is.
boils down
If you're not a nuisance to your neighbor, have whatever kind of animal you want. Just don't be a nuisance to your neighbor.
We'll figure out what.
Well, yeah, that is the truth, yeah.
You know, this thing can get bent a lot of different ways, and that's one way that you can argue that if you're just having 2 days for Kitty ride his birthday party, you're not keeping that animal.
Yeah.
Just a visit.
But
Yeah.
going back to just memory reset, I thought we were relying on the 300 feet being in there. You had to be 300 feet.
And
and then-
to check boxes.
Yes.
So you're wanting to make it more
Yes.
restrictive than it is right now?
Yes.
Okay, okay, that makes more
Yes.
sense.
Because people are bananas, we want
Yeah.
more bananas.
So you want everybody who has animals in the city to have a permit?
If
If it goes beyond that.
if we're talking cows, pigs, sheep, horses, mules, goats, the ones that are listed up here as livestock, I thought we said you got to
You
be
need the-
beyond 300 feet.
Plus, check the boxes.
Plus,
That's
it's
what-
still,
that's how I understood it too.
you still get this checklist. And like I say, that was my understanding. I mean, if I'm incorrect, please.
That was mine too, Sam, but
Because I thought we said that 300 feet nipped 90% of it in the bud already.
And your checklist would
In the checklist,
Yes.
give
what,
maybe the next 10%.
Yes.
Of special circumstances or whatever.
How many properties in the city are zoned agricultural?
Not a lot. I don't know the exact number, but there's not too many that are on A1.
And most of the people that have chickens in particular are not zoned agricultural. It's usually in a residential.
I'm just saying, if it's
Zoning.
zoned A1, somebody wanted to have a cow or two on it, well, you can't have a cow on your agriculturally zoned property.
typically the agriculture are large tracts of land still, which they could have that 300 feet.
So we need to make them push their
But
fence
a
back
cow-
300 feet off their property line to have a cow, and that's just, I don't know, I don't disagree with the nuisance part of it, or the smell or anything like that. Of course, I was always around the farm, it don't bother me, but let's say we've got that number 8 there was, you have to have written consent from your neighbor, adjoining neighbor. Okay, you and your neighbor are pretty good pals, and you get a written consent of it, and you invest money in putting you a goat pen in, and a year down the road, that neighbor leaves, and the next neighbor don't like it. You've already got the written consent from the neighbor at the time, you've invested money, what do you do then?
Just have to have the consent to get the permit.
But most of the complaints we get are residential in nature. You know, when you've got homes pretty close together, or someone brings in a calf or a goat.
You've got a handful.
Yeah.
That's the bulk of it. So it's typically not the farms, it's usually the residential. My personal opinion is kind of what Jessica said, you either have the 300 feet or you don't. If you don't meet the 300 feet, you don't get a permit, you don't get that.
you can certainly exempt A1. Say if you're zoned agricultural, this doesn't apply to you. You're obviously gonna have animals.
I tried to figure out how people would
Yeah,
different
that's true too.
distance or a different way to describe it. And I couldn't figure out a distance that really made sense. In part A there, it says no person shall keep within a residential or traditional neighborhood development district. The way it's drawn, it leaves out agricultural zones. I'm trying to
But
figure
if we're
out-
sticking with the 300 feet, the way we would have to word it, and let me spitball this and you all tell me if I'm going in the right direction or not. We take out this section that's highlighted here that deals with the permit within 300 feet, because we're not gonna let anybody have a permit within 300 feet. And in here, we add a section that says, we may wanna say, except for agricultural zoned properties. Because I don't know that you'd wanna allow this in a commercial district either, you know, right? I mean, I can't,
You can have them within residential or traditional neighborhood districts.
yes, but do we want them to allow them in commercial?
No,
This is,
You could just say,
Just say one.
except for agricultural zoning, you're not allowed to have a permit within 300 feet of a residence or a place of business you can't keep any of these animals.
That light green is agricultural, so
Mhm.
that right there would be, I guess it's the old Loomis Farm, is that it, on 322? Is that Loomis?
There's one down at the bottom that's kinda small.
Yeah, the duck hunters, they were, I don't know if they've recently.
Is that right there in dead center?
Yep, so that's basically the pond, the duck
You're
hunters.
swimming out
And the one above it, yep, that's agricultural. This is the Loomis Farm. This is out there going toward the interstate, I guess it's,
So we could totally eliminate,
or no, it's out there going.
or not,
Cleveland Farm Road up there. And there's not a lot of agriculture.
there's
I
literally
think that's
4, 5.
Neil Kiker. So there's not a ton, that's what I'm saying, most of the, what I would consider farm
I
land
would still
are
put
zoned residential.
agricultural.
So the
I
Tim
mean,
Thomas
if it was
Farm, out there next to you, Alan, Chestnut,
Yeah.
that's all residentially zoned, but they have cattle and they have, there. Not a lot of agriculture.
I mean, and that's the type of thing that I would personally wanna protect. If somebody's already got it established and nothing's been enforced up to this point, and they've spent thousands of dollars on a fence to keep their cattle in, and then you get somebody to move in next to them that don't appreciate that they have cattle on there, then bam, he loses half his property by having to move the fence row back just to keep whatever cows he's got. And to me, that's not right.
Are we talking about, we're not talking about retroactively enforcing this?
no, we cannot. It's,
So
They
it's-
already have the animals as of the time we pass it,
Yeah.
they're in, like, we can't really go back and
So
do
if a
anything
neighbor,
about that.
if a neighbor moves out and another one moves in that don't like the guy that lives next to me's cows, they can't come in here and complain and.
Not if they
Already.
owned the animal before we
Right.
pass this ordinance.
We're kind of
This is-
Now,
grandfathered
the
in.
question would be, can they add 12 more cows to it? I don't know. But,
that's gonna be a change that, once again, the animal control officer initially is gonna have to decide whether or not to revoke the permit because they've got way too many animals.
if we have the
If
permit,
neighborhood, if the neighbor changes and the neighbor doesn't like it, that there is already a permit, then the permit holder has not done anything to violate their permit and they couldn't be headed forward because of that.
okay, so Alan, you're not sure that you agree with the not allowing any permit at all within 300 feet?
If what's there now within that, not necessarily somebody has them a goat or two tied out to a doghouse somewhere, I don't agree with that anyway, because that's cruelty to me. My main thing is to protect the ones that have invested, and that could be possibly a source of income for them, or a way of feeding their family, or whatever the case may be, is that somebody doesn't come in and just don't like it, you know. You came and looked at the property before you bought it, you saw cows in the field next to it. Don't come in and try to change that. We need to make sure that we protect that type of entity, not necessarily somebody, just wanting a pet goat.
But you feel like we couldn't enforce a new ordinance on those people anyway if they already had the animals in place?
No, we could not.
Okay.
So that would take care of that, right?
So if we just remove this highlighted part that says that we can offer a permit, we want to say we're not doing permit at all. If you're not 300 feet away from your neighbor, you can't have this kind of animal, assuming it's not already grandfathered in. Is that how we want it to read, to redraft it?
300 feet definitely sets the boundary and eliminates the large majority.
You can't have goats in Willow Creek for
Yeah.
sure with a 300-foot lot line. So Mike Martin, I'm so sorry.
I'll take my back.
So if and obviously I don't know what the percentage is. If 300 feet takes care of the 90%, this checklist should take care of the rest, because if something becomes a nuisance and one of these is violated, noise, I mean, that's what got us to this point. It was the screaming goat, right?
I will say this though, if we just remove this highlighted part, as that's the ordinance, all we're doing in drafting the ordinance is amending 10-102 to remove everything here that's highlighted and just say, you can't keep these animals within 300 feet of a residence or a place of business in the city, period. And, or we could also add,
Unless you're
unless
A1.
you're in an agriculture district. But that's, that period. Then if someone has one of these animals, even if it's more than 300 feet from their neighbor, they can still violate the noise ordinance, because that's a separate section of the code, so they can still be cited for that. Now, I don't know that we could then take their animals away for it, so much as maybe we would just be able to fine them for it. And I don't know that that's what you all want to do. If they're more than 300 feet away from a neighbor, that'd have to be an awfully loud goat to bother the neighbor, but.
And ultimately, I thought we were trying to draft something
More
that-
restrictive.
draft something that was more restrictive, that actually helped our folks in dealing with these issues.
That's was my understanding as well. That's
Okay.
why we had discussed a checklist and things like that to do.
So it's not really
So
for the
it's not
permit
just
for
in the-
less than
so it's
300
not
feet.
just in
You
the
all want
animal
it for
control
more than
officer.
300 feet. They'd still have to have a permit for it.
Say that again.
You want to have a permit required for more than 300 feet, because that's the only time you're allowed to have these kind of animals now, unless they're grandfathered in. And they also have to meet these requirements. Am I wording that right?
Right.
The way I understood it was 300
300
feet,
feet.
outside of 300 feet, it's whatever. Inside 300 feet was, with the animal control officer being the only one that could make that decision, we wanted other entities within the city government to come in and create the checklist to
And
make
that is
it
how it's
easier.
drafted. That is what
on-
this is.
yeah.
But what I'm hearing is they want it to be more than 300 feet no matter what.
What's wrong with having the 300 feet and the checklist?
Nothing. But the first question that we have to know in order to be able to revise this ordinance is, are we saying you can't have them within 300 feet no matter what? That's the first
Yes.
question. You're
Correct.
saying yes, but I don't think you are. You're saying they can have a
I'm
permit
saying
for
Unless
it.
it's in
yes, if
A1.
it covers, if we word it the way that it protects the grandfather clause.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay.
Cause I understand what he's saying about, somebody come in there, a new neighbor, and just wanna,
Cause
they
trouble.
shouldn't be penalized for that.
Yeah.
The challenge we're presented with is, where do we start? We can start with that, and y'all can go through this in a normal debate formula and amend and vote on each amendment and either pass or not, and then you want another amendment until we sort of get the thing done, or I'll take it back and try to sort of get what I think's a consensus of what y'all are doing, and we'll start with that.
Okay. So this one will probably go back on the workshop for June. I don't think it's ready for June 1st voting yet.
No.
We want to talk about it again in June. And again, we're not on a time schedule about this. There are no pending permits. There's no, there's no time schedule. So we'll add this to June workshop.
Yeah, June workshop.
Okay.
Moving forward, Jessica, could you please share with us your monthly report?
I will. Let's talk about ducks. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's
Okay.
not.
First thing is probably really more in Sam's wheelhouse. He's already told us we're opening bids June 4th. We had a crowded room in here for the pre-bid construction meeting last week. A lot of contractors showed up to bid on it. We hope that means that they're actually going to submit bids and we'll get a good price on it. Sam, what else do you want to add about the community center?
I think we had about 5 GCs in the room. We had some subs. We have put out 2 addendum based on their questions. We're working on a 3rd, which should go out this week. The deadline for their questions I think it's Thursday. We usually get a push at the end, so we'll probably put out 1, maybe 2 more addendum, but it will be open up on Thursday, June the 4th. Right now, we have let them know about the grant requirement to have the room finished. Obviously, the original date is October the 31st. However, we were told by the state entity that once the project gets underway, we'll put in for variance. What's the term? Extension to December the 31st, which is still a little tight, but John, Jessica, and I had an additional meeting on looking at how to pull this off. We think we got a good plan, and that will be passed along to the contractors. If I could ask this question based on budget, and it, like I say, you may need to come back, but if we move forward with obviously the land purchase, which is 1.2, say the community center came in at 5.5, that would be that total 7 million if we move forward with it. What is the possibility, Jessica, of us taking on something of that magnitude? Is it a reality, or is it not a reality? What's it look like number wise? Just so we know kind of going forward, because those prices that the GCs are going to give us will not be good past 30 days. So we will need to have information fairly quickly to let them know. So what's the reality look like?
It would be tough to take on debt that was a $440,000 more payment a year without having additional revenue. Now, that can mean you raise property taxes for it, or it can mean your revenue base grows some other way, like we pick up more property taxes, or property taxes come in better than they were, than what we budgeted for this year. So it's not impossible. I do think it's a stretch.
Sure.
So if we move forward with that, we need to move forward thinking we may be able to swing this a year or 2 and be okay, but then you're probably looking at, if we don't naturally have more growth and more buildings being built and these properties that are being built actually come into fruition and showing up on the tax roll, then you have to look at a property tax increase. So I do think that would be the cost of the
Sure.
community center, is you have to be willing to say in a couple of years, if these things that we know are coming down the pike have not actually built up and picked up on the tax roll, then we'd have to increase property taxes.
So if we purchase the rec property, we can take on 100,000.
I think we can absorb 90,000 and potentially still have a balanced budget going forward. Probably even 200,000, but I think that cutoff probably goes somewhere between the 2 and 4 mark.
Okay. And the only way to do that is a tax increase.
Not necessarily, like, I didn't count any of the houses in Willow Creek that are being built towards our property tax revenue for this coming year. We know that they're gonna be picked up on the property tax roll. You know, if Red Stag builds their second building, when the Hollingsworth group builds their 2 buildings, all of those are hundreds of thousands of dollars in property tax revenue. So as those things happen, those buildings, those new builds generate more property tax revenue. And those are significant enough buildings that you actually see a difference on the tax roll. So that's why I'm saying you might be able to do it for 1 or 2 years out
Right
of fund
now.
balance and then have enough revenue to offset it. But right this second, I couldn't say you have an extra $400,000
And-
each year
and by
offset by revenues.
By no means do we want to empty fund balance. I mean,
No.
that is not what, I just wanna know what the forecast truly looks like, because you've got 6 contractors that are bidding on a project that, you know, they're anticipating the possibility of the large
The whole
project.
project, yeah.
And the other fact on where we're at, I'm being told because of the fuel and steel that 30 days is the maximum that they can hold their bid
Yeah.
cost. We tried to get someone to hold it 60 days and they would not the other day. So, just moving forward, I just wanted to ask the question to get the information out there, so we'd kind of know what we're looking at. So thank you for getting the information for us and looking at what the big picture would look like and what it would entail.
And the offset to that is I have no doubt that if we only can do the first $1 million phase of this to satisfy the $700,000 in grant funding, that if we did have to rebid the remainder of the project, I'm sure the prizes would come in much higher than what we can get right now. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a cost to that too. So,
Sure.
I mean,
The unfortunate is it's cheaper now than it ever will be based on how things work. But by no means are we, or I, gonna empty the general fund, by no means. So, that's kinda where we're at with the bid, with the contractors, with the schedule. And then with the bid opening after our, monthly meeting, we need to do a called meeting after the fact.
I think that would be best. And that way they can focus just on that one item on the meeting and make a decision one way or the other about that. So if those bid openings are June 4th, we might wanna look at a date like that following week in the middle
Okay.
of June. If there's a certain day or time that you all might have better availability. We can do it during the day, we can do it in the evening, whatever. I know some of you all, it's a lot easier in the evening.
Are these bids coming in as full project bids, or is it split up?
There'll be, two separate prices. Obviously, one for the initial build out that we have to do for the grant. And then there'll be a total project cost.
I do, so as part of my report anyway, and we can still stay on this subject, but I do want to thank Sam, because you've gone above and beyond as far as when we ask him to go back and punt and say, hey, what can we do for just the part that meets the grant requirement? Initially, we said we would build just one wing of the 3-section property. And Sam went back to the drawing board and said, you know what, we can actually meet what the grant requires by doing just the interior of the existing building. So what that section of the bid is gonna show is basically the kitchen, storage, and bathroom area, with the kitchen, instead of all the appliances and everything being built out, used as what that room is required for the grant. So your meeting room, your community room. So to me, it makes sense that it would maybe be possible to actually get it done by December 31st if you're just doing the part that's already inside the building. You're not having to build a whole new structure on top of it. That felt like a real stretch. I do think he's come up with a solution and given drawings to the contractors that's gonna make this much more possible. And I'm very appreciative of that work for him, because listen, it's gonna break Sam's heart if we don't do the community center.
No,
It is. We've had so many discussions about this.
Well,
so
it's
the
just-
fact that he's kind of given up his dream a little bit to make sure the city can use this
it-
grant funding and get it over
Trust
with
me,
the first section.
it
is a
has
big deal.
absolutely nothing to do with Sam's dream. It is, I work with these contractors 10 years prior and hopefully 5 years past, and I just need to give them the most accurate information, moving forward. Also, people are asking about the project, and they're asking about it as the whole, not as the part. I just had someone ask Saturday, but we sit in these seats to look at all the information and all the numbers, and it's not easy. And it's very it's very uncomfortable to have to talk about coming up with $500,000. That's the reality of the seats we sit in. It's just,
So in essence, Sam has done what we have asked him to do, not necessarily what he thinks is the best idea, and I appreciate that, Sam. Thank
No,
you
no,
for
it's-
serving the customer well, even if it's not your favorite thing.
the thing about it is, at the end of the day, the money is what the money is. And I'm not gonna put my name on sending the city backwards, financially at all. That's never gonna be the case. But it is looking at the future, because if we don't come up with a plan to do it now, will it ever get done? And will anyone ever truly use that room the way it is? That's what gives me angst. So that's the update on the community center.
Okay, now how about that pool project?
Well, as we all know, it's rained for the last two weeks, and
It's a pool.
Eddie and I met with Taylor last week, and it was a lot of mud. We have another meeting set up, I think Thursday of this week. They will have the health inspector basically inspect all the piping, so we can at least cover up the piping.
They got gravel in today.
Did they?
Small gravel to backfill with,
Okay.
but I haven't seen them take any dirt out of the ditch yet.
Okay. So the gravel's on site.
It's on the side, it's ready for backfill, so.
Okay. They are telling us, as soon as they can get the help.
Oh, sorry.
Is my 5 minutes up?
Yeah, it is. My apologies.
As soon as we get the health department out there to inspect the piping, they can get the piping covered up this week, and then they can start. What's the question, John?
Health department, only thing we're waiting on, because I heard the road.
He's got a scheduled inspection for Thursday, day after tomorrow. Obviously, we can check Thursday morning if you want to keep her on speed dial.
If they're ready and it's holding up work, I can go ahead and call them Thursday after tomorrow, so I don't know.
I'm being told by the project manager that they're coming Thursday, so for whatever that's worth. As soon as we get it inspected, they can start backfilling, cover everything up. They've got all the equipment, so they should be able to hook it up. As soon as they hook it up and start testing it, then they can start the plaster. The plaster, he told us a day and a half, 2 days, and then they can start, once they have the plaster in place, they can start filling with water. The downside,
You said that's what Tim's Cure, the
Yes.
plaster is built into water.
the downside is the site work.
Yeah.
That's the mess. That
I'll give them a source on the dump truck, get it, because they need a single axle truck to get him out of there, you know?
yeah.
I give them the source, if they don't follow through with it, I guess we'll be tapping them on the shoulder.
Well, we'll have another update come Thursday. Once again, contractually, unfortunately, they have till June the 19th to finish. Then it hits the fan with liquidated damages. So, my hopes is it's finished on the 18th, and we fill her up, and we open for June the 21st. We're in by summer.
So, we are getting calls certainly on the pool every day, and what we are telling them is we still are planning on opening in mid-June, and that's the plan. And lifeguard orientation is Thursday. They have all passed their certification. We do have fully certified lifeguards ready to go. We've got a pool manager working on their paperwork this week, so we're gonna be ready to send them in. They're gonna start cleaning out the concession stand and doing all of that work so that the second the contractor says go, we've got everything else lined up and ready to go. We do have an update on the industrial project. The developer called me on Saturday and we had a lengthy conversation. He finally got the final TDEC approvals he'd been waiting on Thursday. And this was not the permitting about the creek and the waterway and all that stuff. This was actually about water supply going to the property through the Watts Bar Utility District water line. So they got their approval on that. On Friday, they awarded their bid for the dirt work, and he says we should see equipment on site this week. So that's good news, encouraging news, and I think we'll continue to hear more on that. Tentative groundbreaking date of June 26th. So if y'all want to mark that on your calendars, hopefully we'll have more firm information in the next couple of weeks, but that's kind of the date they've thrown out so far. If that one doesn't work, they're gonna look at July 11th. So we want everybody to be there and smiling and holding scissors and, cause we are, or not scissors, it would be shovels. We're holding shovels for that one.
Ribbon
Groundbreaking.
cutting.
So that's positive advancement. He has also been talking to the truck stop that's still planning on locating across the street from him about coordinating the road work to make sure they're not putting a new road in and then their construction starts 6 months later and they ruin the new road. So they are going to be coordinating that. He seems very excited about that prospect, so hopefully we'll know more about who that is and they'll be done with their due diligence soon and actually close on the property and all of that. We had our annual vendor day where we do our employee training last Wednesday. So one time a year, all the employees are in the same room. Chief Byram talked to us a little bit about teamwork. He did a great job at that. Thank you, Eddie. Julie pulls all of that together. I do think it's good for the employees to all be together that one time. We get to kind of see the new faces and make fun of John Scruggs for being the longest serving face now. I made all the kids that were, I shouldn't say kids, I sound like an old woman. I made everybody that had been hired since August 1st of everybody that was born after August 1st, 1998 stand up. And then I said John Scruggs started working here August 1st, 1998. So John won the prize for the longest serving employee and probably will continue to for several years, I would say. Anyway, so that was a good day. We did get to talk to him a little bit about the budget and what you all are doing for them going forward as far as eating the health insurance increase and the police and fire hazardous duty supplement. We got to tell them all about those things. So I think they were very appreciative and very receptive to that, and they made sure to tell us all afterwards to pass on their thanks to you all. And we told them, please tell them yourself, because they get sick of hearing from me. They would like to hear from someone else besides me. So, and that leads us to the budget workshop. You all have the most updated draft in your packets. I do also have the spreadsheet here. If there's something we need to look at or drill down a little further into, I can do that. Does anybody have anything specific or questions that they have about the budget draft?
You ready?
Okay, we're gonna move forward.
I think Jim's got some.
Let me,
Oh, Jim's got something. Okay, my apologies, Jim.
so it'll be on record. I guess having previously been involved in a period where we wandered through the land of locusts and deserts on budgets a long time ago, I'm just really concerned with where we're headed, and it ties back into sort of what Sam said about being fiscally responsible for where we're headed. And you know, just an example, and I've talked with Jessica about most of these, so I'm not springing anything here. You know, our ECD fund, we've zeroed that out. Now, it's my understanding that $75,000 of that was the county's money that they've asked us to pay out here on Pleasant Grove Road. So if we're spending the county's money, that's 75,000 more we've got to put in with our, what's already 770,000, if I remember right.
Sorry, just to clarify, their 75 is sitting in the account and our 75 is sitting in the account. Neither one of those have been spent yet.
I know, but the
We've-
ECD in this budget says 0.
And that's because I'm assuming the Hollingsworth Group, the developer, will have the road done in this next budget year, which may not happen. So we would only spend that $150,000 out of ECD towards that road project, which is what the county voted for their 75 to go to and us to go to. If that road project's not done and it's not time for us to pay up yet, we won't spend it in this next year.
Well, but it's gonna be the next year.
It would be
at
the
least,
next year,
right?
yeah.
And even, so you're saying we may have to have our 700,000 this year,
I don't think that's gonna
I
happen,
don't
but,
either.
I mean, it's possible.
but that's part of the, you know, situation we're in. You know, this has been presented to us that we're taking 800 and something thousand out of our fund balance, in one-time money for capital expenses. But we've also got 800 and something thousand dollars in new allocations between the high school project and the raises have been proposed and funding debt service. If it's $1 million we borrow for this, land acquisition, that's $800,000 in new money. I didn't see where it's coming from in this budget. I don't know of any year we've produced $800,000 in new money. And then if in the next year, we've got to have almost $800,000 more to meet this obligation out there on Pleasant Grove Road. And then I think it's the year after that, or the next one, that we've got to have $1 million to buy a fire truck. And we've got, what, 5 million in our fund balance? 7, 5?
Right at 7.
Okay. And so we're spending almost $1 million this year. We'll owe almost another $1 million next year, and almost another $1 million the next year. So we're planning on spending out about $3 million over the next 3 years. Where's it coming from? And you know, I mean, it's just, you know, like this ECD money. I mean, it's either gonna be there or it's not. We're saying in this budget it's spent. You know, maybe we won't spend it, but still, that leaves us with $770,000 to fund somewhere. And if we use our fund balance, then what we've now got is 6 is gonna be 3.
How much did we put directly in fund balance last year?
Over the last 2 years, we've put $1 million back into fund balance.
So 500,000.
Yeah, but it was like 4 and 6 or something. Like it was 600,000 one year and 400,000 one year, and I can't remember which year was which.
So does that,
That is part of it. But I completely agree with what Jim's saying. We can't, and that's why in my budget cover letter, what I said was, it's okay to do this 1 year or 2 years, but we can't do it 3 years in a row or 4 years in a row. And we have already committed to $1 million fire truck, and just the stuff, even if I take out the $1.2 million in new capital projects that we're doing this year, a lot of that's grant funded, so it's, you know, we're gonna be reimbursed for it. But that doesn't make up for the fact that we are definitely spending more than we're bringing in. So, what you're
Well,
saying is absolutely true.
Not just a little bit more. I mean, a little bit more would be like where we give the school system, what is it, $65,000 a year for computers and what's the other one?
Technology and the junior high gym.
Yeah, debt service. And you know, we're sitting here with a $5 million fund balance, and they've got a $15 million fund balance. Well, you know, if you wanna look at little pieces, why are we sending them $60,000 a year? That'll pay for this SRO we need, or buy some equipment for somebody or something. It just frightens me because this 800 we're adding this year, it's gonna be there next year too. Cause it's maintenance of effort, debt service, and salary increasing. So we can't take them, we can't say, oh, we didn't mean to do, you know, they're there, we're baking them in. So, you know, 800 is gonna be there next year, and we gotta have an 8 on top of it to pay for this road. And then we gotta have $1 million to buy a fire truck. I'm just wondering, where's the plan to fund this? You know, and yeah, we can raise property tax, but, you know, that's when I asked about the property tax and when it comes through, that the way they time the billing, and then somebody gets over here to appraise it, and then it gets on our books. You know, we've got a year to 18 months before we ever, you know, if Hector out here gives somebody keys tomorrow, it's not gonna be this budget year, and probably not the next one, before we ever realize a penny. So, you know, property tax is a 2-year proposition. And that'd be if we had a boom and gained $1 million. We wouldn't have it for 2 years. You know, that's what scares me about it.
I think best
And let me
case.
say this too. You know, for instance, I could be a negative Nelly about pay raises. You know, we chose the Social Security COLA as our benchmark. That's 2.5%. Well, you know, I could come in here, raise Cain about, well, why are we adding a 60% premium to that and raising it up to 4%? But it doesn't bother me to do 4% on that, because these folks earn it every day. And if you look at what the Social Security COLA is 3 months, from July to October in 1 year. If you look at that whole year, 2025, it's 3.7. So, you know, we're giving them a little more than inflation, but basically, they're not gonna have any big bonus in their check. You know, we're kinda keeping them up with what it costs to live. So, you know, I know there's things we've got to do, but I'm just, you know,
Waving the yellow
somewhere
flag.
along the way, we need to know how we're gonna do it.
Yeah. Kind of something I'll just show you all. I've kept property taxes essentially level, and I've kept sales tax essentially level. Historically, those have increased significantly, between $100,000 and $300,000 each year. I left them level this year because I'm not totally confident that those are going to go up this year. I do think they will go up over the next 2 to 3 years. I think just with the construction that has already been approved by Planning Commission, you're probably looking at between $200,000 and $300,000 a year in additional property tax revenue. So just with the stuff that's already had site plan approval from Planning Commission. Now, does that mean, like Jim said, the timing on that's funny? The property tax appraisal is done by whoever owns the property on January 1st. So if they don't finish building it till June, we don't get to pick it up that year. It's the next year. We can ask for them to prorate it and pick it up partway through the year, which we will on those big projects. But they don't, you know, they don't have to pick those up until the following year. So there is a lag on that. Best case scenario, we do see $400,000 to $500,000 in new revenue over the next couple of years. But like Jim said, that's still not making up for the $800,000 that we need to not go in the hole. So again, 2018 is the last time we raised property taxes. We said at the time we hoped this got us 10 years before we had to do another property tax increase. 2028 would be 10 years. So part of my thought process is I'm not gonna cheat, which I shouldn't call it cheating because this is probably what a lot of cities do. They just inflate their revenues. I can wave my magic Excel wand and make that revenue read 2.5 million instead of 2.1 million. But that's not, I'm not comfortable with that, and I don't want to do that. I want to come back to y'all at the end of every year and say, hey, look, we brought in more revenue than we expected, which is a much better problem or an issue than saying, hey, we're short on everything. Jim is raising some very important, key issues, and it's something we're all going to have to watch. And again, I think we have to be careful about what we're committing to moving forward. So, now, $350,000 cash is being paid for out of the budget this year for the pool project match on that grant. So that is not a reoccurring expense. That's not something we have to add back in the budget next year. We have also had all of these grants come through at the same time. They were applied for multiple years apart, and just because of COVID and everything that got changed on those timelines, they've all come due at the same time. So I'm definitely feeling I'm not having to transfer money or anything yet. We're not to that point of being stressed out about it, but it definitely feels that there's a tightening now that we haven't had the issue with for several years now. So I do think we need to be aware of that and plan for it. I still think we'll probably have to do a property tax increase in 2028. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll have more revenue come in and we won't have to do that, but I do think that's likely. And that's not adding more obligation to what we've already, accounted for. And I do also think we're gonna have to consider our departments fully staffed for quite a while. Because we've added positions in every department to try and make sure we weren't getting behind of the growth that we would need, particularly in police and fire. And part of those were grant funded, but those grants only lasted a year or two. So now, now it's our responsibility to keep them on. I do think we probably should not be adding employee positions going forward. We're probably gonna have to consider ourselves fully staffed for quite a while until we see more growth and revenue somewhere. And really, that's what eats up more of any, we showed you the other day, 57% of our city budget is employees, benefits, salaries, all of those things. So, those are the big ticket items. And I'm not being a Pollyanna here. I'm not overestimating revenues. I've never done it that way, and I don't wanna start doing that now. I feel very comfortable that I won't have to come to you and say, oops, we didn't bring in as much as I thought we were going to. Does that mean I can say we're gonna have an extra $800,000 at the end of the year? Probably not. It would be great if we could break even. We're saying we're gonna spend $800,000 out of fund balance this year. It'd be great if we only spent $300,000 out of fund balance, just the pool project amount. But, and then again, the expenditures are built out as if we do everything and complete everything in a year. That almost never happens. We almost never get fully done with every single capital project and every single purchase and all of those things. It's built out as if that's what happens, because it could happen, so we want to plan for that. But I can't disagree with anything Jim is saying.
Yes,
Not any of this.
that's why I brought it up.
Based on the 1.6, 800 this year, 800 next year, is that the maximum worst case scenario, or is that what you're saying is potentially could be stretched?
Probably 580,000 of that is built in going forward. We will have to have that amount to budget. Maybe the revenue makes up for that. Most likely it doesn't for at least a couple of years. So I do think you're looking at taking probably a couple million out of fund balance over the next few years to finish out all these capital projects, to keep up with what we've already committed to.
I'm being an optimist to a fault, but taking the two out doesn't account for fund balance we typically put in.
That is true. That's assuming we don't put anything back in the next few years. And we've gotten lucky the last several years and ended up putting far more into fund balance than what we anticipated. So maybe optimistically that'll happen again. But you hate to, you'd rather plan as a pessimist, you know what I mean, than hope for the optimism.
But this budget doesn't account for any fund balance.
For this budget, we are spending $800,000 more than the current year revenue is. So you are taking $800,000 out of fund balance if you pass this budget exactly like it is right now. And that does not include the land purchase, the debt payment on that, which the first year is only $56,000, but after that it'll be $90,000 a year. Now, the recommended fund balance for our level like what the auditors and comptroller's office would say we need to keep in fund balance is about 4.5 million. So we've been operating higher than that. We like having more money than that. If you get down to 4.5 million, you're not going to be able to apply for grants up front and sit and wait for the reimbursement. So that's why we like to keep a higher fund level so that we can make that purchase and then wait to be reimbursed, or we can apply for those grant applications. I will say for me personally, I'm going to probably not apply for a grant with 50% matches, which is what the LPRF grant is. Your Parks and Recreation grant matches are 50%. We are probably going to be looking at, this is only a 10% match or a 20% match. Those are the kind of grants that are worth going after on the big ticket items. If this is a $5,000 grant, then sure, some is better than nothing. But if it's $1 million grant, that does kind of change how we look at applying, whether we apply for that grant or not up front. Any other discussion, or Jim, what else you got?
Well, I mean, I just want to bring that up. It kind of scares me. I mean, with us not knowing what the economy's going to be, we may add 400,000. We may wish we had 400,000 more on top of what we already don't.
And I know
We don't know, and I know nobody knows that. And I appreciate that you try to keep up, not just do bookkeeping magic and make us think, oh, well, yeah. Okay. I'm glad to hear you say might be a little more selective about grants. And I know I don't know all the details. But, when you all allowed me to come back on, now 4 years ago, there were these sidewalk projects. And 4 years later, I mean, we don't even have anything on paper, much less build. Well, these guys could have built a sidewalk 3 years ago.
Guarantee it.
And us paid
You're
for it.
absolutely right.
And I know it's all the red tape, but I'm glad we're gonna maybe take a little closer look at whose pocket we want to pick. Because some of them I just don't see that it's worth.
Well, and that brings up a good point. The TDOT multimodal grant is only a 5% match. But what they budget $1 million for a sidewalk, the street department could probably build that sidewalk for $90,000.
Yes.
So even with only a 5% match on that grant, we'd probably still be better off ahead by not taking the grant on that kind of thing.
Well, if I understand, the one that goes north, we're not even gonna get a sidewalk. Is that right? We're gonna get drawings for a sidewalk.
But the
For how much?
for that was kind of a cost saving measure too, because to move forward on construction with that, I am certain our guys could build that sidewalk cheaper than what the 20% match would have cost us going through TDOT. So that was kind of something that we pulled back on and said, you know what, we're better off trying to build this ourselves instead of doing the TDOT grant on that. And that is definitely the case with several grants. And match-wise, the Parks and Recreation grants are the worst. Nothing else is 50% but them. So that one is the pool project is a major drain this year and in this budget.
It is, but look,
But
how
it
long's
needed
the
to be
pool
done
been
too.
there?
So.
50 years. 50 years almost.
Yeah. I mean, stuff like that's gonna come along.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Bite the bullet and pay for it. Spend the next 50 years enjoying it.
Right.
Well,
Everything you're saying is valid.
here we are.
By the time it gets to you all, I've already passed this through for 3 months and stormed around the office whining about it for 3 months. And I do wish there was a magic wand I could wave, but there's not. And I'm not gonna fudge those revenue numbers and pretend like it's better off than we are. And I know y'all don't want me to do that.
That's not.
We've had it really kinda easy for a
And
while
I
now.
know, like our retail recruitment firm, hopefully they're gonna produce something. Because, their proposal said, hey, we'll be 15, 18 months before we have anything. So, somewhere toward the middle or end of this budget we're looking at, hopefully they'll have some, maybe a couple or 3 things around that'll boost the sales tax revenue. But, that's an if. We're digging some 50 poles.
The silver lining is, based on
We'll all be out of office before then.
No, I'm not running for the hills yet. But the silver lining is there's some hard decisions that need to be made that I think this group can do. We're not emptying the bank. There's still money in there. It's just we're going to have to be uber selective from this point forward until we know or things get built out and we see where we're at. But very good points, Jim. Thank you very much.
And I'm behind whatever we decide as a group to do. You know, I'm not here to throw away a towel, but I just
No,
really need
by
to
no
be
means.
aware of it.
I don't think. I mean, I didn't take it this way.
It's
I'm gonna
not
put
pleasant.
words in these guys' mouth. I don't
When you
think
have
they
to
took
deal
it that
with
way
it.
either. Very good points.
Well, I think, Jim, you saw it. You were there in the belly of the beast at its worst. And
We don't
no
need
one,
back there.
no one wants to go through that again.
We don't
And
need back there.
yes. So
I will not
look
vote
how
for that.
we've come a long way. We want to continue to go.
To go
And
back
thank
there.
you.
That's what I'm saying. I won't
there
vote to
any
go
other,
back
like-
there.
Back to the future.
Is there any other discussion on it or individual line items you have questions about or anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay.
So we have run the budget ad to you can pass it on final reading June 1st, next Monday. If you don't want to, you can put it off to, we can do a called meeting June 29th. Would that be the 29th? Would that be a Monday? If we wait till the 29th, it's just gonna take the state a little longer to give us our approval on our budget, which can affect the issuance of debt. So if we think we're gonna be issuing debt on this land purchase, that could kinda slow us down on that. So that would be the one concern about passing it later. Any other questions on the budget? All right.
Okay, we're going to review the agenda for next Monday night. For public hearings on the final reading, we have ordinances on the budget adopting the Oakland View Estates roads and the rezoning off of Old Athens Pike to a C3. We also have a drafted lease for one of the two properties that we had discussed before. The property now owned by Eric and Judy Hicks, formerly the Richardson's Feed Store lot, for $2,000 yearly. If anyone wants to proceed with that lease, we can authorize Jessica to execute those. Excuse me. In new business, we have received a signalization grant from TDOT to modernize the North and Main Street intersection. TDOT lets the bid and they get the bid and handles the construction, with us maintaining the light going forward. There is no cost to the city for this grant project.
Zero match.
Zero. Next.
Here, here.
Ordinance 1066 comes from a recommendation from the Planning Commission and amend the zoning code to define data centers, crypto mining facilities, and battery energy storage facilities to an M2 zoning as a use on review. So, John, do you have a review of the details of this draft?
Yes, so the planning commission took this, Monday night, a week ago. It had stemmed from, we've been hearing for a while that data centers are looking for property to locate around our area. Some of the other counties and towns around us are doing the same thing, Butler County, Loudoun County, Knox, Henderson. So basically, nobody really had any guidelines in place for data centers because they're a new thing here. You can't just tell them no. You can't just say no to properties that are annexed into the city. If it's a county property, we don't have any say over that unless they choose to subdivide it. Now, what that gets into is the utility services, are they willing to supply them with water, power, sewer, all that stuff, if they're a county property outside of it. So that's where the roadblock that runs through there is, can they get what they need from the utility board if they're not city-owned properties? This ordinance basically puts those guidelines in place, makes it pretty strict on them as far as what they would have to meet to even be able to locate here. Additionally, it's not in this package, I think, Cleveland is also working on an ordinance, the planning commission mentioned to, being that some areas are adopting moratoriums just to allow more time to study data centers and the effects of them, effects on the infrastructure, also just some long-term effects. What does this look, because they're so new to us, what does this look like, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? So that's something else to consider is just buying more time to kind of study and see what's out there.
And there's also one of the people, they're not a Sweetwater City citizen, but was present at last week's meeting, had given you all some information on data centers. So goes along with that. And to my knowledge, no one has signed a non-disclosure agreement either. That rumor has gone rampant as well. We're pretty transparent around here, and so no, when we know the information, that's when we're going to give it. So a lot of misinformation.
We've not seen any plans, we've not issued any permits, I've not been contacted by anybody from the data center organization. It just, we had heard that they were looking for property outside of our city limits and had contacted the utility board to see what the capacity was.
And we have encouraged all those who have questions to please reach out to the people who know, not your local Facebook tyrant. And
Where
as we
does the moratorium leave us, John?
a moratorium.
Places have adopted that, to have time to look into it. What if we're under a moratorium for a year, but somebody comes and wants to start the process?
We don't have any applications right now, but if somebody applies for use on review, U2, or to locate anywhere else really, and we don't have any kind of standards in place, then our General Assembly, in their infinite wisdom, has decided that whoever has that application in place before we do anything has vested property rights. And we can't do anything then to affect them.
So a moratorium is basically,
Now, a moratorium, they've also, the Court of Appeals has said that they don't buy this moratorium business for study. Somebody this arose in the same case along with the vested rights. If somebody's got an application in and you haven't studied it enough to know what you're going to apply, you can't put a moratorium on it and not grant their application just so you can make up your mind, so you can study it. Moratorium ordinance that I have drafted that we would need to take up only after we have standards says that the moratorium would remain in place until somebody can demonstrate that there have been studies and experiences with other like-kind data centers that demonstrates that they can meet these standards. In other words, don't just come to us and you give us your pie in the sky spiel and say, yes, we meet all these. When there's nothing out there to support that you're able to do it, we ought to be able to make those decisions ahead of time, not 5 years later after they've already put so much sound that nobody can stand to live nearby. And so that's the tact I took with the moratorium, because I think because the traditional, we need more time to study, has already failed in court.
Well, and the reason I asked, I know serving on the utility board, I've learned a great deal about what they call capacity. And, you know, if they got in touch with the utility board next week and said, can you service this? And the utility board says, well, yes, we think we can. And then they do, and then we can't develop further subdivisions or businesses in town because we don't have the water capacity, can't provide the sewer service, you know.
And in fact, and
So maybe we need to talk with Eric and just say, you know, if the choice is between, now I assume the choice is between we can provide all of these things for your data center, or we can have them available for residential and commercial development in our city, we can choose between the two.
well, that's what these standards say, is that they have to, in order to get a permit, they have to have the local, whichever utility is providing their capacity, that they have sufficient capacity to do that without affecting the residents or other
Okay.
uses of the capacity.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying is in terms of the moratorium. We don't want them just coming in and saying, here's our certificate that their capacity is available for this much demand that we will have, and just take their word for it, that they're not going to demand twice that much. So that comes right after this.
So back to the original question on a moratorium, do we or do we not have time to say we're not even gonna consider this for X number of days?
No, as far as adopting the standards that have already been recommended, we need to get those in place, because we're in a race with somebody who's going to make an application. We don't know who they are or when they'll be ready to do that, but we do know they're already making inquiries.
So if we have standards in place, once again, I'm sorry I'm so thick on this, but we cannot postpone this. We can't say, we're gonna study this for 6 months or a year. That is not a viable approach.
In fact, I think if they make their application and the board doesn't act on it, John, more familiar with this than I am, if the board doesn't act on it within 60 days, if they don't grant the application within 60 days, then they can go to court and act as if it was denied. They, you know,
Well, and I'm not sure what the final form passed, but I think that initial time period is also to allow you, if there are some things they don't comply with, to give them written notice and say, well, you know, did that get included when it finally passed? Approval on, yeah, the 60-day time period. No, not in that. No, he's talking about state statute got passed. It kind of constricts the time period the planning commission has to, or you, I guess, either approve or not approve.
We've gotta give them.
What they were passing was, if there's a not approved basis, you have to give them written notice, I think within 30 days. And then they've got time to comply, but you're still basically on a 60-day time frame. And if we sit on it and don't do anything for 60 days, it's granted.
right, and that's why I'm saying,
And they also, of course, it'll probably come back next year. It floundered right at the end this year. They're wanting to let counties tell our planning commission they can't control anything outside the actual city limits.
Also sponsored by Representative Cochran.
Bless their hearts. Did you see where they got the Tennessee Wildlife Sportsman of the Year award? Lowe and Cochran.
Of course they did.
I sent them a congratulatory text.
I bet you did.
I did.
And it's not just that.
But the thing, yeah, we probably do need to move pretty quick on this ordinance. Because if we have nothing in place, then we have nothing to fall back on.
I agree.
Of course, you also have to remember, Blue Oval City's now falling apart out in West Tennessee. So,
Maybe we'll take that site
all the
instead.
big things don't always come to pass.
Yes, that is true. John, talk a little bit about one of the things I talked about in Planning Commission. We have a minimum site size.
So
What-
currently the minimum lot area in M2 is 5 acres, and so that was the same lots, minimum lot size for a data center would be 5 acres. One planning commission members had asked if we could put a maximum size. A lot of these data centers you see are on hundreds of acres, they're massive. So, I did reach out to MTS, their legal department, said that they have never run across that in any zoning in the state of Tennessee that they know of where you can put a maximum lot size on a parcel. They said they would not recommend that, just the way that land use is right now in the state of Tennessee. It's trending as less restrictive versus more restrictive. It's I don't think that would be wise to put a maximum lot area on a parcel. Just coming from MTS.
And for the board to know, the most restrictive thing about this ordinance is restricting it to M2 as a use on review. Because we can pull up the zoning map again, but John and I looked at it earlier today. There are only about 4 parcels inside the city limits that are zoned M2. So one, it should raise a red flag to us every time an M2 comes before us, because we know that M2 is the only zone that allows adult bookstores and data centers. So anytime someone's asking for M2, that's a red flag. And 2, the parcels that are owned M2 right now, one of them is smaller than 5 acres, so they couldn't put a data center on that because of the minimum lot size. One is owned by Jordan Mullenhour and Mullenhour Gross, and they have, intentions for that property. And the other one,
Both of the other two are small ones. There's 2 parcels.
there's one small one at the back of the industrial park too, but is that the one that was less than 5 acres? Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's just a lot.
2 that Mullenhour Gross owns behind the Denver.
But the county needs to get on I'm not as concerned, I'm
Well, and
definitely
the county's
concerned about
starting
the
from
city
square
of
one.
Sweet.
They have to adopt an
Sweetwater.
entire zoning code if they want to do
Yes.
anything about this. So they've
Just
got a
fence
lot,
them
much
two off,
longer
put
path
goats
than
in
we
there,
do.
Then they wouldn't want to come
All the
anyway.
goats, that's where all the goats go.
Put all the
Yes.
goats on them too.
Yes.
So passing this as it's written right this second is a pretty strong ordinance for our specific case because of where M2 is located. But also, anybody else that asks for M2, we have to have in the back of our mind always that that's something that allows data centers and adult bookstores.
Strip club, hey, they could make a, 1, 2 in the same, kill 2 birds with 1 stone with that.
But I agree
Okay.
with Jim and everybody else. I don't know, I won't put words in my mouth, but I think we need to move quickly
Yes.
and get it done.
So if we do first reading June 1st, second reading would be the July meeting, and it would be effective, I
We
think
do
on
it in the
zoning
workshop.
ordinances, it's like 10 days after passage. You have to have 14 days between first reading and second reading anyway, so we could make it a little quicker.
Could we do that on the next
For
workshop?
example, if we have a called meeting about the bid openings, you could put 2 items on that and have first
Yeah,
reading
I think it
June
needs to go
1st.
pretty
But
quick.
we need to make sure we schedule the second meeting to where the public hearing and,
Fif-
you know,
Give notice to
And then even after that,
21 days before the hearing.
because it's a rezoning
Notice
ordinance,
of the
yeah.
hearing has to be given.
So if we
I
read
mean,
it
even
on
at
the
that point,
first.
if everything, if we get it in there and then we realize there needs to be something else in there after getting with other communities and cities and governments and things like that, we can always amend it.
If I got the notice
we just need
in
to
on
get
the,
something
because I
in
could
place.
preemptively put the notice in, give notice of the public
you
hearing,
can.
even before we passed it on first reading, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm fixing to
1, 2, 3,
Get me a big hog to get
4,
here out
5, 6,
here.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
And a fat angry dog.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Thursday, June 18th would be the first day we could have a second reading on this. Thursday, June 18th. I'd have to get 3 people here to have a quorum, so. There's one.
Since Brandon missed today, I'll volunteer him.
Okay.
He's around, that's 2.
If it's necessary and there has to be another one, I'll make a way to be here.
Oh, I can.
I can be here.
Yeah, I mean, if you can wake
Okay.
Mike up from his nap.
Well then,
Yeah.
Sam, if it's good with you, we'll do the bid, I'll advertise it as a called meeting
That's
to
two-
review and
2 weeks
accept,
after.
award the bid, and do the, second reading on this, and a public hearing. So I'll put that ad in the newspaper, I'll send it tomorrow to be run on Thursday, and that'll give us 21 days notice.
The
And
18th
14
at
days
5
between
o'clock.
readings. The 18th, you wanna do 5 o'clock? Is that a good time for everyone? The
Sure.
18th at 5? Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you on your, ordinance number, so this will be on, going forward next week. Ordinance number, 1067 is to amend the order of business to comply with the new state legislation that deals with public comment periods. So John, would you review this draft?
Well, we've had to give an opportunity for the public to comment on actionable agenda items. Now we have to give an opportunity for comment on that, as well as any matter germane to the jurisdiction of the governing body. I think I can say with a high degree of confidence that they didn't mean actually somebody debating whether or not we have jurisdiction or authority to do something. I feel very confident what they mean is anything that we might have in mind ever doing that they wanna comment about. I do think that if it is, we still control how much time they get, what order they go in, and all of that. And I don't think that means that somebody can come in, for instance, and wanna talk about, men and women's restrooms. Yes, that's an issue somewhere, but we don't have men and women's restrooms, and we don't have any ordinances that allow it. So I'm thinking that if they wanna talk about things that are of great public interest, that don't have anything really to do with us, that we don't have to let them come in and speak one after the other and line up around this block. So.
Just willy-nilly, or do they need
So
a
all
3-hour?
Well, no, we can we'll have it. This,
time limit.
we already have regulations for all of this in our current ordinance. So all I've done is just added this any matter germane to the jurisdiction of the city commission. I just added that to what we already had to let them comment about actionable agenda items. So, that's all that does.
Action.
Because General Assembly and their ultimate wisdom know more about our business and our meetings than we do.
Not that they have to allow it in their house.
3 minutes, 3 minutes in their house.
No,
Yeah, and then get recognized.
ask the
That's a-
chief.
Yeah.
He drove, y'all drove to Nashville and they wouldn't even let him talk.
Not guaranteed anything in life, will it?
Okay, so that's it on this end. Do we have anything else to throw out?
Oh, and one thing I just.
Oh,
wanted-
yes, that
I
is-
just wanted
that's-
to mention, I don't know if this is especially urgent, but when we did our local option for liquor stores, we debated whether or not to put a limit on the number of them. And we thought at the time that demand will take care of it. They won't be able to stay in business more than maybe 2 or 3. Well, we've got sort of 3.5 right now.
If we feel like liquor stores are not the highest and best use of the available commercial property in Sweetwater, then we might wanna consider limiting the number of liquor stores
The
that we
statute
allow.
says we can set the number so as not to unreasonably restrict the availability of alcoholic beverages for the residents of such municipalities. And I suspect that the three that we have right now is keeping the city well lubricated. And we're not gonna restrict, the availability of alcoholic beverages if we set a limit. That being said, I will draft an ordinance that does that with a blank space for the number, and y'all, it's up to y'all to decide what the number might be, or if you even wanna do it. But I really don't think we would want to have 4 or 5 or 6, and then just have them going out of business willy-nilly. Or whatever it is.
Liquor store to
So
person.
that'll be kind of a fairly quickly,
Ratio.
hopefully, because we'll have the same problem with these vested rights in the application if these applications come in and we haven't done anything.
Okay, department heads. David, I'm gonna start with you tonight. What's going on?
Everything's been going good. I mean, we've been patching potholes, picking stuff up on the side of the road. Business as usual.
All right, city looks great. Eddie Thompson?
All in all, it finally got some good rain,
Yes.
and everything's going good right now.
All right, stay on the pool, people.
And,
Jono?
Can we go back to David just one minute?
Yes, David?
Did they get through with the, spring building down in your neck of the woods?
Yeah,
Yes.
Right, so it's all finished and over?
it's, as far as I know, it's all finished and over with. Yeah, I talked to.
Did they do the planting stuff they had to do along the creek yet?
They did.
Okay.
It's just grass.
Yeah.
It's just overgrown grass. I mean, it looks good.
Okay, all right, thank you.
John Campbell?
Doing good, nothing major other than this, data center stuff that's been swirling around now for a couple of weeks. As we said, the developer should be getting equipment out there on site this week, so that's promising, get those buildings constructed and get them on the tax roll.
Mm-hmm. Chief Byram?
Like everything's moving around pretty well right now. Mr. Stutz got with me a couple weeks ago, about some traffic studies and stuff like that. He followed up on that. I signed, 2 officers. I've got Jordan Moore, Sergeant Moore, which is over our Governor's Highway Safety Grant, and Noah Bowen, who's over our traffic light safety. I've got them going around, and they're trying to compile as much studies as we can. And we're starting to see, I know Mays Avenue will be abused, and I know High Street's gonna be abused as a secondary route. And we're starting to see a lot of transfer trucks get up in that way. Of course, Broad Street schools, you all, I know Sam will remember, I'm pretty sure he will. We talked a long time about trying to make that entrance behind the school up at Broad Street for pickup lines and even a bus line back there possibly. And we're just trying to alleviate some problems like this. We're trying to do some traffic studies on those. We're ready for the county and for the SRO high school. I've got 2 guys that's gonna be going to school this summer. Be Jaron Turpin, and we got him in a free SRO school in Knoxville. And the other one will be
Adam?
Adam. Yep, Adam.
At the high school?
Yeah, I was trying to think where he's going to school at.
Yeah.
He's going to the
SRO.
conference at Sevierville, so he'll actually be getting his certification there. He'll be going to the high school, and Jaron will be taking a gym spot at junior high.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Chief Anderson?
Everything's going good. Finished up, getting everybody on in the school programs and playing around with kiddos. Everything else is regular business, running calls like normal. Everything's going good.
We like to hear it. We like to hear it. Okay. So, anyone else have anything? This has been a good meeting. Lots of good information. I appreciate you all. I appreciate your time, 'cause I know you put it in. And thank you. So, if anyone, all hearts and minds are clear, meeting adjourned.
I got 3 God.